Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedom and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country. In the courtrooms of America, Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedom.
A major case was just argued at the United States Supreme Court involving prayers at public assemblies. Liberty Counsel filed an amicus brief in this case. I am Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel. Joining me is Matt Barber, vice president of Liberty Counsel Action. Matt, this case is called Town of Greece versus Galloway. It's a case coming from New York, and the Supreme Court of the United States just recently heard oral arguments. We're going to have a decision on this case sometime in 2014. But this is a big case on not just prayers at public assemblies. This was prayers at a local government meeting, like a city council, town hall meeting, their county government meeting. They had prayers at the beginning of this meeting, just like many do across the country. And the Court of Appeals ruled that that was unconstitutional. The Supreme Court got into this issue and took the case, and the case has now just been argued. So it's not only going to affect issues such as prayer before your local public assemblies, city council, school board, and county commission meetings, but it also will have potentially a big impact on the church-state issue in general.
Yeah, you have to wonder why this case is even before the Supreme Court. We have a rich history in this nation of prayer. This nation, our very Constitution, was founded on prayer. Benjamin Franklin famously called for stopped during the first Constitutional Convention and said, look, we have reached an impasse. We are not getting anything done. Let's stop and refocus our attentions on our divine Creator and focus, because as he said, I am convinced that God governs in the affairs of man, and we're not going to get past this impasse unless we pray. They prayed fervently. The logjam broke, and the greatest nation on earth was founded with the greatest single document and the longest-lasting constitution in the United States, founded and rooted in prayer. So why we're even having this discussion just shows how far removed we are today from the original vision of the founding fathers. I mean,
that does illustrate how far we are removed, that we're having a debate over whether or not you can have a short little 60-second prayer to open up a city council meeting, whether that somehow violates the First Amendment Establishment Clause. It would never have come to the thinking of the founders or those that drafted the First Amendment that it would violate the Constitution. In fact, we already have a situation where the Supreme Court, in a case called Marsh versus Chambers, it was a case out of the state of Nebraska, where the legislature, like other legislators around the country, opens up its sessions with prayer. That case went to the United States Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said that it's constitutional because the same people who drafted the First Amendment are the same people who authorized the very first chaplain, paid chaplain, I might add, of the federal government to open the legislative sessions with prayer. And the history of Benjamin Franklin and the founders, where they were discussing the Constitution after the Revolution. It looked like it was about ready to fall apart. And Benjamin Franklin has that famous speech where he stands up and he talks about a sparrow not falling to the ground without God's notice. How can we rise a kingdom without God's aid? And he also made a motion that from henceforth that they begin every meeting with prayer. They ultimately stopped their meeting. They had a very lengthy couple-of-day prayer session, came back and restarted their meetings again with prayer, and the Constitution was born. So with that history, there's no way that the First Amendment could be contrary to prayer at the legislative sessions. This is a situation where it takes the same prayer, whether it's federal government or state legislature, now down to the local body of the city, the county, the school board.
And Liberty Counsel, we're here to defend the very Constitution that is under assault by those who seek to religiously cleanse and wash away any reference to secularize the United States of America. And, it's funny, Matt, because the question of whether or not city councils can open in prayer or assemblies can open in prayer, it's been happening since the inception of our nation, since since day one, since before day one. And so, we also have state constitutions here. The left uses the Establishment Clause, a mere 10 words, says Congress shall respect no law, establish or make no law respecting an establishment of religion. They like to forget the other part of that, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. They twist that and they revise history and they revise the Constitution to push their secularist agenda. But the reality is that we have always had prayer in state assemblies and in municipalities and in the halls of the United States Congress.
And none of them have established a religion.
No.
And you're right. It was something that was part of our tradition before we were a nation. It was something that was part of General Washington when he was leading the Revolutionary Army. He encouraged his troops to participate in prayer and religious service and to ask God for his intervention into their lives and into their activities. So this has been part of who we are. And what happened was there was some courts. This was a court up in the Northeast that governs the Federal Court of Appeals for New York that said these prayers are unconstitutional. There was a federal court of appeals in the southeastern part of the United States that governs Florida, Georgia, and Alabama that says that the same kind of prayer is constitutional. There was a recent decision from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals out in California and Oregon, those areas out there, Hawaii, that says that the same kind of prayer is constitutional. So you had this split taking place between the courts of appeals, and the United States Supreme Court decided to enter into this fray by taking this case, which I think is a good sign. Of course, you can never predict what the Supreme Court's going to say at the end of the day. So continue to keep it in your prayers. Liberty Counsel filed an amicus brief in this case. But again, it's not just about the importance that this will have on prayer at this local government body level. It could also bring some more sanity, that's my prayer, back to the Establishment Clause. We argued that the test that they have developed for the Establishment Clause ought to be reconsidered and put aside and go back to more of a historical understanding of the Establishment Clause with regards to at least a coercion, physical coercion, so that if the government is coercing you, if they're fining you, if they're punishing you by threatening jail or some other kind of force, physical force, to engage in a religious activity, that's a whole lot different than having prayer at a public assembly, having prayer at a graduation ceremony, having "In God We Trust" on your coinage.
Well, exactly, and that's the irony here. If the prayer in these assemblies that are before the court here, if these kind of prayers are unconstitutional, then our national motto is unconstitutional. "In God We Trust." Then all the constitutions, the state constitutions of all 50 states are unconstitutional, because they all recognize God and his benevolence and his divine intervention in the founding of our nation and of these states. And they all recognize, each of all 50 states recognize their adherence and their dependence upon God. So if these prayers are unconstitutional, all 50 state constitutions are, quote, unconstitutional.
Well, and some courts have engaged in just some mind-boggling rationale to justify "In God We Trust" as a motto or something like that. They say, well, it has been used so many times, it is no longer religious. So the problem with that idea is that means that, well, at one time it was unconstitutional, but over time we've used it so much and we don't think about it that it no longer is constitutional anymore. So basically we take all the religious guts out of it. And it really doesn't mean what it says. Well, no, "In God We Trust" does mean what it says. It was put on the coins for a reason. It was an expression of American thinking that we do trust in God, that the Supreme Court even said we are a religious nation. Our institutions presuppose the existence of a supreme being. The Declaration of Independence says we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights, among which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We'll keep an eye on this case. Thank you for joining us and being a partner with Liberty Counsel in both your prayers and your financial support. We are involved in filing an amicus brief in this important case, not only asking that this court uphold prayer at these local levels of government, but also redo some of the convoluted Establishment Clause rules that the court has developed over the time, these rules and these tests have deviated from the original understanding of the Constitution, and we believe it's time to get back to a better understanding, historical adherence to the Constitution, not just the First Amendment, but the entire Constitution as well. Go to Liberty Counsel's website for more information. You can order David Barton's book, Original Intent. It's a very fascinating read of the founding of this country. Many things that you may have heard about, many of which you have not heard about because they're not taught typically in American education, but they're part of our heritage and our history. That's the book by David Barton, Original Intent, and also the book, The New England Primer. Go to lc.org.
You have been listening to Faith and Freedom with Liberty Counsel. We hope that we have motivated you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedom. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email updates. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.